today's class we are going to take up writing the audiovisual script. But before going over to the audiovisual script, we are going to have some more discussion on structures. So we will begin by taking an example. So for example, you decide to make a film program on women in politics, okay, with the purpose that you would like to encourage women to be more politically active and also to join active politics, and to tell them that politics is not always a dirty game. It's definitely a tough game, but it has its own rewards. So that may be the purpose of your film, and the central idea of your film could be stated as join politics to make a difference. Okay, and perhaps the inspiration for making this film, Women in Politics, is the that bill for 33% reservation of women in the parliament, which never got passed. The bill was drafted, but it never got passed. Now, the film is not going to be about the bill, but that bill perhaps is the inspiration for making this film on women in politics. So, the first decision that you have to take is what kind of women are you going to choose. Suppose it's a 40 minutes long film. So, what kind of women politicians are you going to choose? So, it has to be a variety, in the sense that some maybe a very senior politician, you can take a panchayat leader, woman panchayat leader, so, or a village woman. So, like that you have to make a judicious choice. Would you like to take a film actress who has come into politics? Do you think it will be wise to take a film?
Ma'am, I think it makes it more glamorized if, you know, it's a, again, so it's become a tradition, I think, in politics in this case, that if you enter a film fraternity, or if you know, if you're a part of the television series, and if you're a good bahu and a housewife, then automatically you'll be taken by one of the parties
politics
to symbolize
explore the image, the screen image of that person.
And it will be interesting if, you know, we actually, if she is of what she projects herself, she's not that, and when she goes back home, she's a complete different person.
So, to bring out that concept, exactly. So it will be interesting. So that way you have to make a judicious choice of the women. Okay, so that is your first decision. Actually, now we have to decide how to structure the film. Okay, so obviously this will be 4 women's stories, but then will it be that 4 neat segments, each segment dedicated to one woman, and you are tracing her life history, her career from her, you know, earlier studenthood to today? Will it be like that, or are you going to intercut from one woman to another? No. So what kind of structure will be?
I think intercut will be a nice idea.
Will be better, because this will be too predictable and there won't be a build up. It will be like 4 different films. Okay, there won't be any integration between them. So obviously we are not going to go for that. Okay. So let us plan the establishing sequence. The establishing sequence has to establish the subject of the film, the protagonist, as well as the central idea and the theme. Okay. Now suppose, this is just a suggestion, that we begin with a blank frame, and then an oval, graphic of an oval appears here, and inside the oval a woman's face fades in, a still portrait. So it becomes like a portrait, and then her name, position and constituency get typed. Okay. And while this is getting typed, a voiceover gives a one-line introduction to the woman. I mean, not that she is a leader in such constitution, not that. You know, about her character, or a one-line voiceover that will bring out something, some interesting aspect of her personality. Just one line. Okay. So that will arouse curiosity more about the woman. So that way, then a second one appears. Okay. Third one. Maybe here, 3 here, the fourth one, so 4 women, one by one, and then another here appears, another oval where the name of the film comes.
So is it, it's happening in the same frame, and one oval is coming down, and then the other?
They're coming to, they are.
It's just getting placed in the frame.
Getting placed in the frame, getting placed in the frame. Okay, so and then the name comes. And with the name, maybe a music, the title music can also fade in. Then the title music fades out, and one of the frames get animated. Earlier they were all still, it's animated, and she starts speaking, and then we can either zoom in or we can cut to a close up of this and this woman's story. We take off on this woman's story. Okay, so then after the establishing sequence, the main sequence begins with one woman's story. But now we have to make this crucial judgment of how to go from one woman's story to another woman's story. How to make a transition. Now here also I have a suggestion that you think of 5 interesting questions to ask these women. So maybe after the title appears, the voiceover will ask the first question, okay, and in answer to that first question, whatever we see, that sequence that follows will be like an answer to the first question. Okay. Understood? And then one by one, all of them will show their chunks of life, or they will speak, which will be an answer to the first question. All right, and then the second question will appear. So like that, each question will be one segment, and in each segment, all the 5 women answer the same question in their own ways. So that way it will be a very symmetric. Some people might think it is too symmetrical, too neat.
But it will be very well presented.
Well presented. Okay, and so therefore in each segment all the 5 women are appearing. Now to give a build up to your structure, that is where you have to decide what questions you will ask. So you begin by asking comparatively simpler questions, but the later questions should be more and more provocative. Then there will be a build up. Okay, so you have these 5 questions, and then in the end, in conclusion, again this appears, this design of the frame appear, and now it is small interview bites, because while making the film you will have to take the long extended interviews. So small interview bites of one then another, and then this one, like that, as if they are talking to each other, because otherwise these are 5 women living in 5 parts of the country who will never meet and who have very little chance to work together. Okay, so only in this, like this, you can present them together. It is little interview bites. This is one sentence, one sentence she, like that, lifting from the interviews that you have taken, which looks like as if they are talking to each other. Okay, and all of them are basically making the same point, or maybe reinforcing the same idea, and that way you conclude your film. So that will be the concluding sequence. Can you suggest the 5 questions with some very general question which we can ask to all of them, and all of them will answer in their own ways, will have something to answer. So, and that will also create a build up in your film. So can you think of those questions?
Like the first and the most, the basic question will be why they are into politics, and what they want to do.
Okay. So therefore, one question is why they are into politics. Okay.
Yeah.
Why into politics? And the second, what do they want to achieve?
Yeah.
Then ask some more provocative questions.
What inspired them to?
Role model.
Or what was the main source of inspiration? Why suddenly?
That is, I guess, would be an answer to the first question itself.
That will be. So instead, role model, maybe model is one who you look up to, who is a role model whom you like to emulate. Okay, role model. Think of some other interesting questions, because the questions are very crucial. If the question is interesting, answers will be interesting, and you will be able to bring out the true picture.
Ma'am, you could ask that
The struggle in a man's in a male-dominated environment. How do you assert yourself?
how would they
That's
feel
how-
if how would they feel if the prime minister was a female instead of being a male?
Okay.
What would will their position be raised? Will they feel much more secure being in the party, or
So
will it be
Sonia
just
Gandhi
another?
PM.
We can also ask how the political scenario has changed in these years.
In your career,
Yeah, in your career.
I mean,
Yeah.
from your early induction
Yeah.
into politics till today.
Till
So
today.
let them all answer in their own way.
And is any priority changed, like the total political scenario?
So change in political scenario, shift in priorities. But here you have to remember the purpose of making this film. The purpose is to encourage women to
join
take up
politics.
politics, at least be politically more active. And politics is not a dirty game, it's a tough game. But you have to be a tough woman. How slowly you become tough, from docile you
Yeah.
become tough, okay? And what rewards does it bring you? It has its own rewards. So we have to show, I mean, rewards is not obviously monetary rewards, but some satisfaction of making a change for the better, making a difference. So those aspects have to be brought out.
Ma'am, you know, I think that, like you said, that we have to show the how much struggle it requires to actually be in that position, and it's just not glamorized. We could actually show their personal lives, like how they manage it. Apart from being a housewife, I mean, not
So
housewife,
that means
apart
how
from
do
being
they
a
balance
mother,
this
wife.
public life and
Yeah,
life
how
and
we
private
balance
life.
the both the lives.
Because a politician is a public figure.
Yeah.
So, and a homemaker,
How
a
they, you know,
housewife
secure their
is
privacy.
a private, very private kind of existence. So therefore, how do they balance the two? Private life and public life. How do they do the balancing? Whether one spills over into the other, or whether there are two separate domains. Okay.
Now we can also ask them what are their views on reservation of seats for.
Yes, about the bill, women's bill.
Because
Okay.
ma'am, that if even if they answer in a way, you know, that might just encourage other women to join politics.
Yes, yes.
You know, it's their rights to stand up,
Yeah.
and why
Yeah.
shouldn't they stand up? And
Ma'am, we could also have this question where we can actually ask them that how did the senior or male politicians respond when they first came into politics? Which would actually might bring out a lot of controversies, because we have seen so many times that there have been problems.
Another interesting question to ask would be the stigma of corruption that is attached
Yeah.
to politician. So maybe you can ask, are women politicians less corruptible, or do you think politics corrupts, something like that? Okay. So out of this, then we have to refresh some, and we can't ask so many perhaps, but 5 to 6 questions we have to select, or crop 2 questions into one, do something, and we have to ask the questions. Okay. Achha, so that will give it a structure.
Yeah.
Okay. Then which will be the last question? Which do you think is the most, which will create maximum
think,
controversy? This male-dominated
Male-dominated,
environment.
male-dominated.
How do they survive in the
True.
or no?
If the Prime Minister is a female, what will be their response towards it, and how secure will they feel?
Maybe that will.
That
Or maybe we
Because
could ask-
male-dominated will automatically.
That's the main.
Yeah, because logically it will come earlier on.
Yeah.
Yes, Paritha, what were you saying?
Ma'am, I was just thinking if we could include the question that what were the difficulties that you faced when you came into politics and throughout your career, because we see a lot of people are harassed by male.
That will come in that what it is.
politicians,
What
yeah.
is it to be hold a position?
Yeah,
a
that would be
political-
a more controversial way to ask the question actually. That is what I thought.
Okay. Now, your segments are going to have interviews as well as voiceovers. Interview is when they are directly answer the question, and voiceover is in between, just giving brief introduction about their daily routine, about the challenges, which because everything in interview it will become too long. So in voiceover you can summarize it and with appropriate visuals. So there will be interview and there will be voiceover.
We can also show clippings of their rallies which they have addressed.
Yes, of course. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. If they are there, we can show the clippings. So this is the kind of material that is going to be there. They are working in office, their public address, their election campaign, then their private life, at home. What is their thing when they are alone? Okay, when they are working alone, when there is nobody around them, then what is it like? So these aspects have to be brought out visually. So extensive shooting is required. Okay. Now, how would you introduce these women? More or less, we have an idea who these women are, hypothetically. So, how would you, in the beginning, how would you introduce these women? One line voiceover, I said, no, that which will bring out some interesting aspect of the woman's personality. So, would you like to?
While introducing Rabri Devi, you can talk about like how Mr. Lalu Yadav went to the jail and how she stepped into his shoes and become the CM. So this way you can introduce the characters, so that giving significance because people know about them. So it will be a very good idea to begin with.
So we are non-committal in the sense we don't give any value judgment about the characters in the voiceover. Neither negative nor positive, but of course there can be some humor. Okay, and so the voiceover has to be interesting. So, but just one line, but it has to be interesting. Okay, so it's time for a break, but before we break, let's have a quick recap of what we have discussed so far.
Ma'am, like you said in the beginning, that alternate to the three-act dramatic structure that we have in fiction films, in non-fiction films, we basically have to explore more. But what we have to keep in mind is that it should have a smooth flow and it should have a good build-up.
Okay.
That's
So
one
whatever
of
be the structure,
yeah,
smooth flow and build-up is essential.
Essential.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for a film like this, like Women in Politics, it's very important to choose the right politician that will appeal to the people. Okay, and it is very
And
essential.
represent
Yeah.
the entire diversity. So making the correct choice of the protagonist is important. Okay,
And
what else?
ma'am, the establishing sequences in non-fiction films should basically is very important, and it should establish the subject, the theme, the central idea, as well as the protagonist, and give a a brief idea to the viewer.
What is going to follow?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
And then, ma'am, we were discussing about how this film would go with inclusion of interviews as well as voiceovers, and then we talked about how the introductory voiceover would be for each of the persons, and the nature of the voiceover and what it should be. It shouldn't be judgmental about the characters or maybe the political persona of the person, but just a glimpse of her, maybe.
Some unknown facet
Yeah.
of her personality
Life,
and
yeah.
with some humor. So for writing the audiovisual script, you have to divide this A4 size page into 3 columns. The first column will have the sequence number, so sequence 1, okay, and then second column will have the visual description, third column will have the audio description. So sequence 1, you begin with the visual description. And while white screen or black screen and oval fades in the upper left hand side of the frame, portrait of a woman fades in inside the oval. She is old but dignified with a longish face. Her name, age, status and state get typed in black letters below the oval. Okay. So this is the description of the visual. Then when the name etc. get typed, you hear the sound of typing. So corresponding with that part of the visual, you write here sound of typing synchronized with the alphabets appearing on screen. So that audio gets synchronized with the visual. So don't write it on top. Write it at the position where the visual, the corresponding visual is there. Okay. Then a voiceover introduces that. So you write voiceover and write the lines of the voiceover. Whatever the lines are, lines of the voiceover. After the voiceover, the second oval beside the first one, another similar oval fades in, and again the similar thing is there.
Yeah.
The face of another lady fades inside the oval. Again, sound of typewriter synchronized with the alphabets appearing. You put it at an appropriate place here, and then again you write the voiceover. Okay. So similarly, all the three, all the other, and then the name of the program. The last this thing oval, the name of the program comes. Name of the program, and with this the title music also comes. Now you had something to suggest about the title music.
Ma'am,
here.
I don't remember the album or the singer's name, but there was this particular song sung by this female artist. It went like this: I'm a bitch, I'm a lover. It went, I'm a bitch, I'm a lover, I'm a sinner, I'm a saint. So I thought, when we showing the different faces, one can, have this thing in a mind. She's, different characteristics of that particular thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
and politicians are always controversial.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Okay, so we could have that as your title music. So with the name, the title music fades in and fades out, and then the first question is asked in the voiceover, which sets the ball rolling. So the voiceover you put, voiceover question 1, whatever you think is the first question. What inducted you into politics or something like that. So you put it there. And with this, the first sequence, establishing sequence ends. But how does the transition take place from the establishing sequence to the next sequence? The lady in one oval begins to speak, and then and that particular oval becomes big and occupies the whole screen, or we cut to her close up, either thing. So if that particular oval becomes bigger and occupies the whole screen, covering all the other, when that will look better,
Yeah,
when
that'll
she
look
begins
nice.
to speak. So you give the description that how the transition takes place, and then of course when this sequence begins, so this is sequence 2 for which is for the first question. When this sequence begins, they have to give the description of the type of visuals you will get. Now when you are writing the script, the first sequence you can plan it fully because it's more like a graphic pattern. But now in the second sequence, you have to take the shots. So when you are writing the script, you do not exactly know what kind of shots you will get. You know basically that okay, the answer to the question of she has to begin by giving an answer to the question, and then we will show her at work. Okay, and the types of visuals will be, as we said, she is in her office, she is alone with her family at a rally, election campaign, okay, other kinds of things, maybe at the party meeting, whatever. So we have an idea about the types of visuals, but exactly what the visual is going to be, we cannot describe here. So we give a very broad description of the visual. So say close up of the first lady speaking, she is in her office or study alone at night. The clock behind shows 9 p.m. I mean, this you can even make sure that you get a visual like this. I mean, this much will be in your control. That at 9 p.m. you show, so you put a clock behind her which shows 9 p.m. That just to show that she is working late. Okay, so you know that you will get definitely a visual like this. So, but more details you cannot. All right. So like that, it's going to proceed. So this is the format for writing the audiovisual script. Now, is this clear? Do you have to ask anything?
Ma'am, like in documentaries, when you're shooting, isn't it, I don't know whether it's a preconceived notion or something, but they say that you should not have more interviews because a person who's actually watching it, he might get bored just watching one person talk. So this is an entire interview session that we're having, but in normal documentaries that you're taking, supposing if I'm making a movie on Fort William, do you think that we should keep more interviews of the officers, or should it emphasize more on the monuments than on the interviews?
No, that depends. There is a lot of scope for visuals. So you go for visuals, and those interviews that you take, their voice you can put. If they have spoken well, and if they have spoken something very significant, you don't have to show them all the time speaking. You know, their voice can be there on the soundtrack, which is a substitute for the voiceover, and you can show visuals.
And even if I keep the interviews, it shouldn't be then long for the thing, because
interviews,
the visuals will be dominating.
Exactly. Each interview should not be very long drawn. You know, some people even believe, some documentary filmmakers, that voiceovers, they want to do away with voiceovers completely, because they feel that interviews are let people draw their own conclusion. Using voiceover, you're trying to force your own conclusion or to the viewer. So let it be open-ended, let the viewers come to their own conclusion. So they just string together interviews. So there is no voiceover at all. But there are interesting visuals, but the spoken word is only interviews. So there are many documentaries like that. There is a trend among a class of documentary filmmakers to do that. But yes, at a particular one, in one shot, a very long interview is definitely not advisable. You have to cut it, and immediately following that another interview or just a visual like that. Okay, so variation you have to bring in, but that doesn't make you do away with interviews.
Because when you're shooting a documentary, even when you're asking the questions, you don't know what the person is going to answer or how the person will react to the particular question. So it's all spontaneous.
Yes, absolutely.
So you should.
You have to take the interview and take a long interview. Out of that, you may end up using only 30 seconds. Okay, but so it will be, the shooting ratio will be very high, but it's worth taking a long interview. So this is generally the audiovisual format. Any other question about the formatting? So is this clear? So if when you sit down to write, it will come to you smoothly. There won't be a problem. Okay. That in addition to what you have written down in your audiovisual script, when you actually go for shooting, you should shoot more. You should shoot extra. Okay, and when you are actually doing the film, you will see that some of that will come in handy. Something that was unplanned, unanticipated, which is not there in your audiovisual script, that also you shoot. Okay, so that is where you have to improvise, and the beauty of a documentary is to capture the unexpected. So you let the unexpected pour into your camera. Okay, create space for it. Alternatively, there may be films with very abstract ideas, okay, very broad and abstract ideas. Like one student once told me that he wants to do a film on patriarchy. The subject of the film is patriarchy. Now, the problem with this subject is that it is a very vast and all-pervading thing. You know, you see signs of patriarchy everywhere. So, what to focus on, how to focus on, and whom to address. So, these things have to be. I mean, it's very difficult to get a structure of a film which is so broad-based. So, we did a lot of brainstorming, and we came up with this suggestion. So, I would like to have your opinion on this. The suggestion is like this, that you show some scenes like a male priest doing puja and a woman helping him, which actually happens during Durga Puja and all that. Then another scene, maybe a bride leaving for her husband's house the day after the wedding, she is crying, and the mother is crying, a typical scene. Then third, husband comes home, wife offers tea. Okay, so these are scenes we are used to. Okay, then you should reenact these scenes with the roles flipped. So a lady doing puja and a man is helping out. The husband living and the father crying. Okay, so like that you get these enacted, and then you show. And then while it is being shown, you can hear guffaws of laughter. So basically it is being played on video on a screen. So you zoom out and show that a group of youngsters like you, they are sitting and watching and they are laughing. And then the filmmaker comes in, who can also be the anchor, and says that, see, the patriarchy is so deep-rooted that anything which is different is taken as an aberration. Means it is it has got naturalized. The patriarchal values have got so naturalized that anything that is different is just a joke, taken as an aberration. And then there can be a discussion among them. You know, that why is it unnatural? Some people will say there is nothing natural, it's just a convention. Some people will say no, this is totally unnatural. And through that discussion, some conclusion will have to be reached. So after a lot of brainstorming, we thought that maybe this is an idea that can work.
That is a very nice
so
idea.
This is how some various types of alternate structures that can emerge. Yeah, you can do brainstorming and you can come up with a different type of structures. So I think that is all for today, and we just let us have a recap before we conclude.
Basically, for an audiovisual script, we divide the page into 3 columns. The first column, we name the sequence.
They give the number.
That gives an identity to the sequence.
Yes, absolutely.
Second column is visual description, which can be precise as well as it can also be broad.
Depending on the situation.
Because it's a documentary, you know, we can't decide. And then the third column would be the audio column, which would have the corresponding sound to that part of the visual, and as well as the voiceover.
And maybe the music also.
And also the music. And in addition to this audio-visual script, we should always, in case of a documentary, we should always shoot much more extra than what is there in the script, because in a documentary, it demands to capture the unexpected. It is here where we have to improvise and